The date at the time of writing this is the 21st of December, 2023. As of right now, 2 teenagers methodically calculated murdering Brianna Ghey, a trans teenager in Warrington, luring her to a park and stabbing her 28 times, have been given life sentences. Justice, however, has not been done. The environment that created this crime didn't come out of nowhere. It's the product of a decade-long hate campaign stoked by the British press, chiefly newspapers such as the Sunday Times, the Daily Mail and the Guardian. But even outlets like the BBC have contributed to this atmosphere. Every day, hate speech painting trans people as irredeemable comic book villains is published as if it is fact. And as always in this country, the government is now following in the hateful footsteps of its press corps. Justice has not been done. The environment that allowed for this tragedy has only gotten worse. The air thick with hate. Brianna Ghey did not get justice, and her death should be seen as a warning of what will happen if the British media's relentless hate campaign is allowed to continue. What you're seeing on screen now is a collection of headlines from British newspapers between the 11th of February and 20th December 2023, between the date Brianna was murdered and the date of the conviction of the 2 teenagers who meticulously planned her murder with explicit transphobic intent. Something that is clear in the transcripts, but because the UK's hate crime laws are pretty useless, did not apparently factor into the official charges. Make no mistake, the blood is on the hands of the editors, headline writers, and bosses at these newspapers. The UK's newspaper press is a toxic, hateful cesspit, and for years now, it has produced multiple rabidly anti-trans scare stories every week. They have pushed the government to clamp down harder and harder on trans people, and to make transphobia the du jour social issue of both the Conservative and Labour parties. Without this constant hate campaign, without the ongoing reinforcement of the idea that all trans people are disgusting sexual predators out to molest, rape and murder, this crime would be made much less likely. And with the new guidance issued by the Conservative government on trans kids, the government, with the explicit backing of our entire mainstream media, is guaranteeing that cases like the murder of Brianna Ghey will happen again and again. Children will die because of the new guidance from those at the top of the British government. Children will die, and have died, because of their hateful bile spewed from the frothing mouths of the editors of the Daily Mail, the Sunday Times, the Telegraph, the Daily Express, the BBC, the Guardian, and more. The entire political spectrum of our press, from left to far right, has worked for years to make the murder of Brianna Ghey happen. And they will not stop. The Daily Mail had one singular break to make their crocodile tears for Brianna a headline upon the sentencing of her murderers being announced. But the same week their headline was explicitly cheering on the new government guidance, praising Kemi Badenoch for finally making sure that no trans people will ever be able to go through school with the dignity and sanity they deserve. The press made this their key issue for years, and they finally got what they wanted. Do not believe them when they pretend to grieve for Brianna Ghey. They did this. They wanted this. When the BBC published their article, "We're being pressured into sex by some trans women," interviewing American admitted rapist Lily Cade, who later wrote a blog post calling for the lynching, yes, literally lynching, of multiple high-profile trans women and our supporters. They didn't care that the end result would be violence. That was the point. You don't imply an entire minority group of rapists without implying they should, at least, be treated with suspicion. Every single one. And that's frankly being generous, because what that article was a call for violence against trans women, disguised as a cry for help. Besides the interview with Lily Cade, the article quoted the co-founder of transphobic hate group Get the L Out, who who warned that lesbians are still extremely scared to speak out, as well as the co-founder of the LGB Alliance, another transphobic hate group, who said that a sizable minority of trans women pressure lesbians to go out with them and have sex with them. The BBC did not bother to ask for a source for this extremely inflammatory claim. The article was edited multiple times, and you can follow that saga on Sean's YouTube channel as he took viewers through the complaints process each time, but it is still up. This was the BBC, the famously impartial news source, the official voice of the British government, trusted all over the world. To have this on the BBC with such violent words and hateful intent is devastating. The end result of this media storm would come later, when two teenagers would take matters into their own hands and murder a child in cold blood. When the Daily Telegraph, no relation, published in January 2023, 1 month before the murder of Brianna Ghey, "Women are being erased by trans extremism," warning that trans ideology was erasing women from sight, they knew what they were doing. Or another from January 2023, "The government should not be browbeaten into a ban on transgender conversion therapy." This is a call for the protection of an internationally recognised form of torture, specifically demanding that it stays legal to torture trans people. And how did they qualify this? Vulnerable children and concerned parents face being left without help. That help? Well, concerned parents, according to the Daily Telegraph, should be sending their vulnerable children to get tortured. They know what they are doing. The British press has been clapping and giggling with the fall in acceptance of trans people over the past few years, a result of the constant bombardment of hate speech in their pages. Murder would always be the result of this. And now they've captured both major parties, they're not going to back down. This is a problem that's only going to get worse, unless something major is done now. Even at the time of writing, post-verdict, The Guardian writes that why the murderers targeted Brianna Ghey is unclear. It was not. It's very clear. But for The Guardian, who have been supremely guilty of pushing transphobic hate for years now, it's inconvenient. Because the truth implicates them. In a letter between the murderers, one of the murderers jokes that they want to see whether Brianna will scream like a girl or a boy when she dies. They refer to her multiple times as it. Testimony from her friends suggests that she was actually quite well liked and respected amongst most of her peers. Her head teacher even wrote a statement explicitly condemning the British press and saying that this entire process had made him lose faith in them. It's not hard to understand why. Brianna was targeted because she was trans. The only reason The Guardian deny it is because they know that they're guilty of stirring up this hate. Their rhetoric creates the conditions for hate crimes like the one that killed Brianna to erupt out of the burning hatred they've created. In Brianna's head teacher's own words, "My disillusionment with the tabloid press and social media has grown daily. It is still happening now. I realise it is a beast that can't be tamed, and that scares me." In the Metro, a newspaper which itself has blood in its hands, Jesso Thompson, a transgender freelance journalist, writes today something that I think all trans people know too well. The language used by Brianna's murderers to justify the murder they were planning was the very same language we see all the time online. And I might add, sometimes by columnists at the very British newspapers that are now reporting on this story as if they ever gave a shit about Brianna or any trans person's well-being. "I've been asked repeatedly if I found the transphobic messages shocking. I confess I did not. This is because I see this sort of language all the time. I see it in my social media replies, in hate messages sent to my email inbox. Trans people are used to being talked about in these terms." Boy Y told the court that he had learned to talk about trans people this way from his schoolmates. This language has become normalised, apparently even among children. We must be concerned about the normalisation of transphobia and how it makes trans children more vulnerable. According to a Stonewall report in 2017, 64% of trans pupils were bullied for being trans. On top of that, 1 in 10 trans pupils has been subjected to death threats. And having said all of that, it's not as if the crocodile tears currently being shed by our newspapers is even convincing. During the trial, Brianna's dead name came up, which was a necessary part of the case. However, many British newspapers decided to report this. Even in death, she is disrespected, the past dug up, denied her right to be herself. After everything, the British newspapers still insist on tarnishing her name. During the Blair era, there was a big push to regulate the British press, one that has now been completely abandoned. But it's necessary. The British press are 2-1, used as the mouthpiece of billionaires, to fearmonger and demand violence against minorities, whether that be Muslims, black people, trans people, or even just protesters. For a moment after the phone hacking scandal, where the press was found to have been spying on citizens to get scoops for articles, it looked like something, however small, might be done to prevent them from terrorising the public, making minorities in this country less safe, and embodying the classic British idea of the 2 minutes hate. Something still needs to be done. The aim of reforming the press was completely abandoned. People are dying. Children are dying. And the newspapers your parents read every morning are stained with black, white, and red. And just so you know the stakes, and the things that the oh-so-noble warriors for free speech and democracy in the British press fought so hard for, this is the gist of the recent government guidance. A new Section 28 for transgender children that I warned about in my video, Britain's War on Trans Kids, a few months ago. Guidance that encourages the bullying of children for being trans, enforces denial of their right to live as they choose, and ensures they are forcibly outed to their parents. Whether their parents are abusive, violent, extremely religious, or just plain transphobic, makes no difference. The government wants kids outed. The government wants children of transphobic parents to be forced back in the closet. The government wants children to be shamed by their parents, by their school, by their entire community, because the press demanded it for nearly a decade. This is the prize they won. A prize that will pave the streets with blood. According to Kemi Badenoch, the current Minister for Women and Equalities, which somehow isn't an ironic position, considering her politics are only marginally to the left of Adolf Hitler, the principles underpinning the new guidance for schools for gender-questioning children released literally the day before the Brianna Ghey trial ended and demonstrated how dangerous Britain currently is for trans children are. There is no general duty on schools to allow a child to socially transition. No child is born in the wrong body. Some children may not like their body, and we should help them. But social transitioning is not a neutral act, and should only happen in rare circumstances. Sex is not assigned at birth, it is observed at birth, and schools need to be aware of this. Parents should be included in all decisions relating to a child's request to socially transition. No one loves children more than their parents, and it is wrong to exclude parents from what can be a pathway to irreversible medical decisions. We should not be compelling speech or attacking others because of their beliefs or identity. Finally, we outline that schools and colleges have duties to safeguard and promote the welfare of all children. Not just for those making a request for social transition, but all the children in a school. Knowing a child's sex is critical to a school's safeguarding duties. So, to keep children safe, and make sure trans ideology doesn't run rampant in Britain's schools and do something horrific like allowing 1 or 2 children in every 1,000 to be fucking happy for once in their goddamn lives, the government is insisting that parents be the final say on whether kids can transition at all, in any capacity. Teachers and students are free to misgender, dead name, and generally bully trans people with no consequences in the name of freedom of speech. Because, of course, it's not an attack to harass trans people, but it is an attack to call someone transphobic for making a trans person's life miserable. On a more technical level, every school must record the assigned sex at birth of every pupil and are compelled to keep it that way in their records, as the government website says. Every school must record the name and biological sex of every pupil in the admissions register. It is not accurate to record a male child as female or a female child as male, or to record a male child as a girl or a female child as a boy. Which essentially means the government's official guidance compels you to misgender all trans kids and keep their assigned sex at birth on record in perpetuity, so you always remember that they're trans. May they never be accepted as anything but an aberration. Thanks, Kemi. All of this is explicitly against safeguarding rules, by the way. You're explicitly not supposed to give parents information that might put children in harm's way. That's like one of the key rules. Except now, the government says that you have to, so that's going to result in pain and heartache, if not worse. Schools can, according to the oh-so-wise people in the Conservative Party, decline a request to change a child's pronouns, and primary school-aged children should not have different pronouns than the sex-based pronouns. Schools and colleges should not compel teachers or pupils to use new pronouns except when necessary to safeguard, and all other options have been exhausted, such as addressing the child by their first name. So even if your parents are okay with you being out, all your friends address you by your correct name and pronouns, and you're happy as Larry with everything, or Larita as it goes, if any teacher or student decides, they can just tell you to fuck off. If you are transgender, you have no right to self-determination. Your bullies get to decide what's best for you instead. I can't imagine a situation where even your parents are all on board with everything, but your head teacher watches a bit too much Jordan Peterson, and now you're just bullied on an institutional level with no recourse for change. How did anyone think through this scenario and decide this was something okay to push through with? And if this all doesn't sound fucked up enough already for you, there's a bathroom ban in here. Trans kids are forbidden from using the correct bathrooms. Amazing! That won't lead to any bullying at all. Let me tell you, when I was a kid, I used the bathroom of my assigned sex, and I still got bullied to shit in there for being too much like a girl. It's good to know that that scenario on steroids is just mandated by law now. If any residential accommodations are needed, there's a ban on that too. Sleep with the boys, trans girl. I'm sure they'll be very cool and normal about that. Again, my own experiences tell me otherwise, and I wasn't even out. There's a fairness in women's sports thing in here as well, warning schools from allowing trans people to perform in the right team, and also single-sex schools, which are a bit fucking weird in the first place in my opinion, can outright refuse to admit students because they're trans. Amazing, great, fantastic, legalised discrimination. For some reason also, there's a thing about not being allowed to wear the swimwear of your gender, so if you're a trans girl and you have breasts, I guess they just have to be out on full display because the uniform will just be shorts. What? How? This whole thing is just top to bottom unspeakably cruel. If you are as concerned as I am about this, the government is running a 12-week consultation on this guidance. Please respond to it and give your strongest condemnation. I'll put a link in the description. I doubt it'll stop them, but it might make them reconsider some of the worst aspects at least. And any one of these things could kill children, so please help. We can't let what happened to Brianna Ghey happen again. The press will continue their hate campaign, and more people will be radicalized. Violence against trans people will continue to be framed as something morally permissible or even necessary. Not in such explicit terms, maybe, but by the rhetoric of calling all trans people groomers or that they're dangerous to women and similar dangerous dog whistles. The government has capitulated after trying to stick to rhetoric rather than action for years. After playing the press's line and calling trans people creepy and dangerous over and over again, they've thrown down the gauntlet. They want trans people to suffer. They want to bully trans kids back into the closet. And they don't care if they kill people doing it. Don't let them win. I've seen a couple of people calling the fact that Brianna's murderers will be facing decades in jail a victory for justice. But this isn't true at all. Justice would be making sure this never happens again. Justice would be using this moment to make Britain a safe place for trans kids. Instead, it's more dangerous than it's ever been. There will be more Brianna Gheys if the government has its way. And if the press keeps spreading hate across this country unchallenged, day after day. Don't let them. Fight back. For Brianna. For all of us. Hey everyone, not going to do the hard sell this week because of the topic and tone, so thank you to everyone who supports me. You are the reason I managed to even be able to come home for Christmas. If you're able to help me out financially, I would very much appreciate it, as I am absolutely skint, not sugarcoating it. You can give me a tip at Coffee or PayPal if you want to. Links in the description. Or you can send it to my Patreon, where you get a bunch of bonus stuff, members Discord access, and your name read out at the end of every video. So thank you this week to Stephanie, Jason Cribbett, Raven Tempest, Shield Vaden, Robin Podolsky, Infernal Ramblings, Exploding Turtle, Casual Observer, Terry Roberts, Manta Ray, Courtney Burmack, Sleepy Slug, Philippa Tabroga, Belligerent Kitten, Soma Piglet, Brain Douche, 4AS, Artie Wolf, Hayden Gala, Greg Noble, No Kings Only Fools, Deanna McMillan, Caroline Regalado, Alexandra Lilly, PJ Lesbrel, Howard Lott, Lara Van Loon, Nerania Scarjan, and Joey Cobalt. Thanks, guys.
It's to be home. People I've loved have no regrets. Some I remember, some I forget. Some of them living, some of them dead.